Welcome, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be the warm-up guy, despite some of the laughter here, so hey. I'm Justin Vaughan-Brown, Product Marketing at AppDynamics. I'm very pleased to welcome you here or back from lunch. Hopefully you're all fed and watered and ready to go here. We've got a great presentation here from two great guys from Cerner Health out of Philadelphia with 27 and 38 years experience behind them. So Bill and Dave are going to talk about a lot of the complexity that they've dealt with at Cerner Health, which has been a consistent theme, I think, throughout the whole conference. And without further ado, I'd actually like to hand over to the real rock stars here. So please give them a warm hand to Bill and Dave.
Great. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, but first thing I'd like to do is ask a couple questions of the audience so we know which way to tailor this. How many people here currently own AppDynamics? Wow, that's the majority of the audience. How many people are on-premise? Oh, good, awesome. We can be a big hand to you. And how many people are SaaS? I'll assume it's the other half. Very good. So you can sleep for my presentation and you'll want to listen to Dave's presentation. We'll leave it at that. So again, welcome. We are a very large AppDynamics client. We currently have 5,600 agents in production running. And what I want to take you through is our thought process and really some of the mistakes we made. Because we made some huge mistakes, but we also had reasons for making those mistakes. And I want to explain to you. And I want to also leave you with things to think about, because you bring AppDynamics in, and it's almost like the honeymoon is over, and you never really planned for the things that you really needed to plan for. How many servers am I going to need? How am I organizing all this with my people, right? You have all these applications. So hopefully you get a lot of that out of here, and we can talk about it. And I'm really not opposed to hands up, but we've got a lot to get through, so we'll try to keep questions to the end. I was going to let it go and kind of flow, but we'll just take it that way. Kind of our agenda, configuring and installing the agents, kind of the process we went through, sizing and tuning controllers. That was a big deal for us. Explain how we got around that. Finding clients seems stupid. We have 5 controllers. And support calls up and literally is like, how am I going to find a client? Where is it? I got to go through every 5 controllers. So we had a lot of problems with that. We'll go through that. License control, 4 controllers, 4 sets of licenses, plus you have EUM license. You have a lot of problems, so I'll go through that. Application challenges, Dave will go through organizing, deeper dive, and configuring. Again, that'll be more for your SaaS people. But again, we hope you come out of this with some takeaway, right? That was always my agenda here, was that to make sure that you walk away with some piece of knowledge that you didn't have. So let's hopefully we achieve that. I got to pay the bills. The people that flew me out here is Cerner Health is who we work for. This is our company. We're a small mom and pop shop. We're worldwide. This is what we have. Kind of speaks for itself. We are, just so you know, Dave and I work in the software division. So you check into a hospital, it's our software, if they're a Cerner client that's running on it. The main focus of us is, of course, it's a financial application, and our financial application is made up of multi-applications. Dave will explain that more. So, but just so you know, we are a software development company, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing, because sometimes we're know-it-alls when we shouldn't be know-it-alls, and sometimes we're good at what we do. Our story is pretty straightforward. We were a Wiley shop. And one of the problems we had was we weren't really getting a good view of our application. So I kind of like to explain it like this. I was a soccer coach for my daughter for 8 years. And one of the things as a soccer coach standing on the sidelines, right, is you get to view your players, right? So you say, well, you know, it's not really working because I want all my players, the ball's not going up the right side, and I know their side's weak on the right side. So the kind of the goal, right, is almost the same in soccer as with all of our applications. You got to follow the data flow. And you want to make sure the data flow is going exactly the way you want it in the most efficient way, and that it's working. And as a coach, if I had that view, I couldn't see my data flow. And so when we put AppDynamics in, we noticed that something happened to us. We were finally able to see the field. And I am not kidding you. We were shocked at what we saw. We didn't know what we weren't seeing, and I'm sure if you're AppDynamics clients, which most of you are, and you're instrumenting it correctly, you will see the same thing. We were very impressed. In fact, we had AppDynamics in our development area for probably a year, and we finally started to look at it. And to his credit, Dave called me up and he said, okay, you got to see this product. It's like Wiley on steroids, and it actually is telling us stuff. So I took his advice, we put it in, and we started looking at it and said, oh my God, we need this product. So 20,000 licenses later, we actually got the product. And this is the process I want to take you through, because there is kind of a hangover after the party, right? Because you're fighting. Most of your stuff's internal political stuff, right? Why are we going to spend all this money on this? Is it really going to save us? And then finally you convince everybody, oh, we got it in. Now what do you got to do? And one of the problems you have is you've got to kind of put a momentum in there, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit. So some of the challenges we faced, I think everybody in this room can read, where we, again, had installed, how do you deliver the agent software? A lot of these thoughts, we were very large, and we really didn't take them into account because you're so busy fighting to show value, right? And that's what you've got to do with the product. You can't ask your client, or you can't ask your business to spend millions of dollars on something and not be able to show a return on investment. So you're so focused on that, all of a sudden they say, yeah, all right, we'll buy it. And then you're like, oh crap, I got a lot of stuff I got to get done here. So these were some of the things we had problems with. We have multi-client cells. Some of our cells, if anybody knows WebSphere, they have the concept of cells. And we have some of our cases where if it's one hospital, they have a whole cell for our financial application, but then we can have multi-tenant scheduling cells. We can have multi-tenant other products. So you can buy all these products, but some of them are multi-tenant, some of them aren't. So that's a challenge, because you know, if you anything about AppDynamics, that you want to have all your applications in the same controller, so your support people have the same view. And one of the problems we have is we have 4 controllers eventually, and you can't take a multi-tenant app and split it up, but we eventually did, and I did it through Python scripting, and I can kind of explain that to anyone. Again, I'm going to have to be general and go fast. If anyone ever has a question, if tonight or anything, we are approachable. We will answer your questions, and if I can't answer your questions, I will email you a question. We're here to help. So how many controllers do we need? That was always a big one, right? They come in, they'll tell you, oh, you can run all this on one controller. Well, no, we couldn't. And how will support be able to find a customer? And I'll get into that a little bit. All right, how do we get installed to all customers? And let me try to explain this as best I can. And I had to go over this in my head. We looked really stupid in the beginning, but when we purchased the product, you got to think about this. You just asked your company to make a leap of faith on you, and it was on me and Dave. I mean, if anybody looked bad, it was us two. It's very personal to me. So one of the things that I thought about is that marketing, right? In marketing, you always have that momentum, right? Because everybody's excited. So they want to always keep the momentum going, because then you want to purchase. Well, when you get a product in like this, at this size, you've got to create momentum. So that was the only vision I had at the time, was getting momentum there, because you want your user community excited about the product you just purchased. If you don't get them excited about it, it ends up like Wiley. It ends up sitting on my shelf, or I end up sitting there having people that don't know how to use it or are never excited to use it because they've never seen it. I had to build excitement. And that sounds really stupid, right? You just spent millions of dollars on a product and you got no one excited about it. Well, everybody's got their little fiefdom, right? Some people like Dynatrace. Some people want OpNet. Some people want this. And ultimately, you got the decision maker, and they're not happy about it. So they're not really that incentivized to come and join you. So the thing that we thought about the most was, how do we get momentum? And one of the ways, the best ways to get momentum was during the POC, we put everything through the perf lab. So once we get everything through our performance lab, we know it's pretty much GA. So that's kind of a trick, right? You say, oh, we're doing the POC, can you guys run through the perf lab? But at the same time, they're also checking off on it. So knowing that, we knew that we had clients that were in pain. And who's your clients that are always in pain? Your biggest clients, right? They're the first ones on the phone. The client spending the most money with you is the one who's on the phone with you. And what we ended up doing was, Dave and I talked, and he says, listen, because we need this in this client, and these are our hottest clients. So we ended up taking it and putting it in, but inadvertently, because my focus was only getting momentum, I did not focus on how's the best and most efficient way to do it. So maybe that'll help explain to you why I'm telling you about this process. So one of the first things we thought of is, okay, what do we want? So we know we wanted agent software. We know we wanted a machine agent, and then there was some community software, right? If no one's familiar with it, it ties into the machine agent. And we wanted to get those together and then have it. So the first thing we decided was, okay, we'll make a bundle. I don't want to be distributing the machine agent and this agent. So we made a package up, and we put the machine agent and the agents together and said, okay, that's how we're going to do it. And we're going to put it out there on a share. Well, security came back and said, no share for you. You're not allowed to. So we had to kind of hack it. And again, my only concern at the time was getting it out there. I could have cared less how inefficient I got it out there. We wanted it out there. So what we ended up doing was kind of cheating. Anyone familiar with WebSphere knows that the ND deployment manager, the D manager they call in WebSphere, has a config directory. So we put the software in a config directory, and that was a way of cheating. So when you sync the nodes, it would push it out to all the servers on that node. Now, if you try to use my cheater method, I'll give you a little advice. The machine agent and the APM agent drop their logs in the current location. So if you know anything about WebSphere, your nodes will not sync because your logs are constantly being updated. Just an FYI for you, make sure you change those two things. That will burn you, and it burned me. I have people calling up all the time. One of the other mistakes we made in speed, and I shouldn't say we, I made, was not variabilizing the JVM arguments. I don't care if you're on Tomcat, I don't care if you're on WebSphere, you should make your JVM arguments variables, because changing one variable is a lot easier than going through multiple JVMs. We have places where we'll have 25 to 30 JVMs per server. I don't want to be in that business of going through. So variabilize everything. Now, one of the things that I'm going to get in with the variables, and I kind of brought these two kind of go together. Obviously, you want to script everything, right? That's a no-brainer. But we didn't have that time. So once I started getting out to these, potentially big clients, and people started using it, I was able to at least take a breath, step back a little bit, and say, okay, now it's time to organize and start writing Python scripts. The two things I'll warn you about when you're getting into this, and whether you're variabilizing or not, is your tiers and your nodes. Those are probably your two non-static variables in AppDynamics. Reason being is we have multiple applications within one cell, so we couldn't just do one tier. If you have that, congratulations, your life's easy. Ours wasn't. If you have multiple applications in one, then you have to have a way of figuring it out. So my Python scripts had to have the smarts to know that this JVM goes in this tier. Second problem we had is we have dual cells. I don't know if anybody else does this trick. So what we do is we run two of the same instances, and we have NetScaler sitting in the center, or an F5, whatever you want to call it. And then we'll point it to the active cell, and then we'll have the passive cell. And then when we upgrade the passive cell, we kind of flip them over. Well, one of the little gotchas in AppDynamics is the tier name does not denote uniqueness. In other words, if you call your tier SCED, and then you say for my passive cell, I'm going to call it SCED1, it won't work. It needs to know individual node names. So in other words, my passive cell, so on my active cell, it was node underscore, whatever the node name is, underscore 00. And then on my passive cell was underscore 01. You have to denote uniqueness between the two. So remember that if you try any tricks with that, the node uniqueness will if you don't do it, you will not see any output. So I just kind of try to warn you there. So following along. So our problem then became, okay, we've got these big clients coming in. We had at the time one controller. Now we had a product called CarXL, and it had a Hadoop cluster, and it had 27 servers on it. I didn't pick those sizes for that server. I did like anybody else does at a big company. I walk into a guy's office and say, what do you got on the floor? And he says, well, I have 27 Hadoop servers left over, and this is the size of them. They're pretty big boxes. So we said, oh my God, it's more than we're going to need. We should be golden. So we put it up there. We started sending work into the first controller. We realized, we got a problem. Performance is now terrible in AppDynamics. We have way too much work going into it. So we set up a second controller. And we started feeding all of our data to that. And soon we had a third controller. Soon we had a fourth controller. And we had to have a test controller now because the other ones were full. One of the takeaways here about all this, and I'm going to get into how to tune it, but here's our story, and I'm being completely honest. We were running the controllers. All of them were performing poorly, and they were all I/O bound. And again, this is where I tell you, being a software creator, when you're kind of cocky, right? So we get all our people together and say, well, the problem is I/O, and they're looking at all the storage, and they're saying, it ain't going to work. So they said, tell you what, we'll upgrade you to SSD. So we threw hardware at it, which is really something I do not like to do. I think it's probably the worst thing you can do. You should always go for the software, but I said, all right, whatever, if it gets us around it, it's quick. There was literally only 2 of us doing it at the time. So I said, we just got to get past the pain point. So we threw SSD on all the boxes, spent the money, and we were a little bit better. And we were shocked because we were waiting to see everything clear up. So here is my takeaway from all this. You get into these situations, and time again, AppDynamics wrote the software. They know the software. They own the software. We got together with their people, and as stupid as it is, we just did an upgrade. And what ended up happening was, because we have a 90 gig heap in our Glassfish, we were causing issues, and the level that we were at the time for our software was not able to handle that. So we threw on 4.1.8, I remember this specifically, and it was like night and day. Had I known to do that and stop and maybe make a phone call and say, hey, you know what, I got a problem, instead of trying to be Mr. Fix-It-All, I probably could have saved 4 SSD devices. Now, I'm not giving them back. I like them. In fact, I never told them that I fixed it, but and hell, I ordered 4 more. So but that's just a takeaway. Seriously, talk to the guys before you do anything. A habit to get into, and we're starting to get there. Eventually, we worked our way up to chef, is a long story short. We have recipes now, and we're starting to move over to that. They come out with a lot of fixes quickly. I've never seen anything like this. I've been doing this 27 years, and it's probably the new way of doing things, and I'll just have to say maybe I'm a fossil. But one of the things that you have to prepare yourself for is a lot of being able to change. And I can't emphasize that enough. And consistent change. It's one of the things that I've been pushing AppDynamics to, because especially if you have a large place and they're like, well, if you got to go up to 4.2.6 or something like, sometimes these changes are hard, right? You have to get through process improvement. You have to get through all these people. So you almost have to develop a backdoor way to get your software out there, because even though you got people screaming at you, you got to get through the process police. So really, when you're thinking about all this, you think, I've got to change quickly, and I've got to be able to change accurately. And that really is a take-home, and I've discovered that the hard way. We stay now on a stable piece. Since everything's going into Chef now, if it's stable, then I will stay on that piece. In other words, not that it's breaking anything, but more or less, I'm not getting something I want out of the software, but I'll have to suffer, right? Like if you see 4.2.5's got some new implementations, well, Dave and I would love to have it, but we can't, because now we're stuck to Chef. And we can't go until the process police okay it, and it goes through all that. Bad thing, no, in all honesty. We would like to have the new features. We were a lot more dynamic before, but hey, it is what it is. So tune your controller. Remember this. You have the controller has its own AppDynamics instance, right? It's in this enable accounts true. Comes in handy. You're going to be looking at your domain XML, and you're going to be looking at your DBCNF, right? Those are 2 physical files. I found after doing an upgrade, what happens is the domains XML and DBCNF get put back to model, right? And it automatically starts the AppDynamics controller back up. Unbeknownst to me, I'm like, oh, I'm having everybody check it out, make sure everything's working. Oh, it's working good. And I, ask Dave, I forget 100 times, and he calls up, he goes, this thing's running horrible. What did you do? Well, you have to remember that the first thing I know is look at this buffer pool size, which is in the DBCNF, and if I see it set to model, I already know I've got a problem right there. So really, they have a tuning guide in there. Now, I know it's for extra large clients. And all I ask is that when you're listening to us, put a thumb to the wind of what I'm telling you. Maybe you don't need it, but you can use some of the parameters in some of these tuning guides. And they really do know the product pretty good, because I've learned the hard way, I'll be honest. Check CPUs being used. That one's kind of interesting. At startup, you'll notice it looks like it's single-threaded. through one CPU, and I know when I'm working, because all my CPUs are getting hit. So if I have some tuning thing off, I'll see like maybe 12 CPUs getting hit or something like that. So just something to be aware of. You will see all CPUs being hit uniformly if you're tuned correctly. When it's fully up, when it's coming up, you're just going to see 1 to 2 CPUs tops. And I think that's got something to do with the buffering, and Mike can shake his head yes or no. Yes. Yeah, okay. Tuning MySQL, that's going to be your pain point a lot of times. It's gotten better. Like I said, with the newer releases, I really haven't had to get in there and really be that interested in it, which tells me that things are going good. Watch for data explosion and set your metric retention. I can't emphasize this enough. This, you have to have a sit down with your application people. Luckily, my application people sits right here. So, and there was only 2 of us, so we could make decisions quickly. But you got to ask yourself, all right, how long do you really need to keep data? And I'll give you an example. We have Splunk, right? So we use Splunk for all of our security. All right, so security can be audited, and you have to keep 7 years worth of data. Okay, reasonable. Are you auditing AppDynamics? I mean, that was always the question. Do you need to keep a year's worth of data? And what's that costing you to keep a year's worth of data? So one of the first things we did is we chopped it down to 45 days. And I don't know, did we go down to 30? I don't even remember. I think we were talking about going down to 30.
Yeah.
Really, the period we only really care about, and let me emphasize this too. You've got to tune your business transactions, right? How long you want to keep them? How long you want to keep your metric retention? That's the 45 days I was just talking about. Your events. I mean, these are all things you really want to think about, because if you're using it for support, or even say your DevOps thing, maybe you want to keep it longer for DevOps, I don't know. Why do you need data for 3 months unless you're right? It's not an SLA tool. Maybe the analytics engine is an SLA tool, but this really isn't. I mean, it's more of a, I got a problem. And if you got a problem over 90 days and you haven't discovered it in AppDynamics, you really got a good problem. So, I mean, that's just my advice to you. So we keep 7 days for the business transactions. We keep most things 7 days. We don't do roll-up. We do roll-ups at 4 hours. We did not extend that. Give you a thumb to the wind. We're 700. One of our controllers is 700,000 metrics a minute, and that uses 1.3 terabytes. So I don't know if that means anything to anyone here or anyone cares, but that's just a thumb to the wind. So it'll give you an idea. And then I used to give you the retention. I don't think I put it in here. I had a lot of detail stuff, and they're like, no one wants to see details. So I'm like, okay. So I pulled some of the details out. But if anyone wants them, I will be more than happy to give you exactly what we have set up. And you can use that. One of the biggest challenges we had, and I got to watch the time here, is we had 4 controllers eventually, right? So now we got all our problems solved. Well, did we? The controllers are all running good, but you have to think about it this way. We have hospitals that purchase multiple applications, and the application itself is multi-tenant or it's standalone. And so we had to kind of marry those two. Well, what ended up happening is, if this was your 4-controller view, is I would have hospital, we'll call it Hospital Vegas. And they own scheduling, and they also own the Soaring Financial application. Well, scheduling is it's on its own. So what we did was, we'll put Las Vegas Soaring Financial here, and inevitably somebody puts their scheduling here. So now what we had was support calling up and constantly wasting time because they had a scheduling issue that interrupts with our Soaring Financials. Well, they're like, I thought, you bought AppDynamics, I thought this product can marry the two. Well, yeah, it does, but it has to be in the same controller, right? It doesn't know about it because it's in another controller. So one of the issues was, how do we get this all organized? So the community edition people are going to kill me for this. Found 3 ways to do it. There is in the community Python SDK out there. I took that, combined it with Elasticsearch and Kibana, and wrote a Python script that queries all 4 of our controllers. Now, this is not rocket science, and I'll explain to you why it is not rocket science. The Python for SDK, I thought I put it in here, but I guess I didn't, has an example folder. So if you download, there's an example folder in there, and one of them is license count, right? So you'll run the Python script, and it'll say license count. So the license count equals a JVM, right? Because it's 1 license per 1 JVM. So I said, okay, I can figure out how to figure out how many JVMs I have. Then the other information, if you start looking at the objects and you start doing the DIR on the objects, you'll see that you can get a lot of information out of these objects being passed back by that SDK. Well, we had to have a way to display it. I didn't want to just blow it into a file, so I thought, well, I thought AppDynamics uses Elasticsearch, why shouldn't I? So I pulled out Elasticsearch. So I pumped that data into Elasticsearch, and we look at Kibana to view it. So you say, well, what do you get out of that? So what we get out of that is we can take and tear the data out of all 4 of our controllers, and now that's all searchable. So there's 2 uses for this. A, support, right? They got to know where the controller is. Now, of course, you're right, you can get stuff on an alert, but if they have to go in and they have to start troubleshooting it probably from the night before, this is the easy way to do it. It also shows the JVMs. So this is our claims messaging engine. And if you look to the right, it has tiers, and I did the tiers just to make sure. So someone would look through the tiers, and they didn't see the word SCED. They kind of know. They come down here, and you can see SCED. Now, I should have taken a screen print off where we had one client that has multiple multiple pieces of this on different controllers. So here's our controller. So what I did is in Kibana, you can take and you can make something a URL. So I took this string, made it a URL, and now they can just click on this. So these are some of the things you can do to get around the problem. I will warn you, and I know you're going to do it like we did it. Pick an uppercase or lowercase and stick with it. Because once somebody gets in and fat fingers something, you're going to have 2 apps in the same controller for the same hospital. And then you got to go out and then inevitably they go, oh, I spelled it wrong. Bring the JVM down, they change it to the right way, hook it into it, and then we forget about it. And then if you go in and you look at our application list and you look at load, right? There's that one application dashboard. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and you can sort by load, and you go all the way to the bottom, you go, oh my God. And you have got so many applications down there not taking load. And the reason they're not taking load is because somebody probably fat-fingered it, discovered it, and didn't realize that there's an entry put into your controller. So one of the lessons that you need to learn is keep your controller clean, and I don't care how small you are, you will do this. It's just almost a guarantee. Dave and I were watching, I forget who it was, a demo from somebody, and we just happened to spot at the bottom of their screen. Sure enough, they had the same thing we had, where they had these applications, they were using them, someone got rid of it, and no one went in to delete the application. You have to have a process around that because you will have messy controllers or a messy controller. And then that's just as bad because now when you go and you want to bring up one hospital name, you'll see 5 applications. That does you no good either because now you don't know which one's active and you got to sit there and click through each, I got to click through St. Tammany with a lower T to see if that's the real one or was it the one with the upper T? And then I had to remember it. And so that's probably one of the biggest problems we had once we got everything organized in the back end is just this kind of stuff. What else you can do with this is you can look at your license count. So if you're just a cheater, you take the license example out of the license folder and you apply it to this. And now you can manage better. And the reason I had to do this is not so much that I cared about license, but what I cared about was where my clients were going. We had no visibility into that besides me going in and clicking in each one, looking at the license count and saying, ooh, okay, this one's a little high, and then going into the next one. That's not the way to do business. We had to know what was going on. So you can see over here, it's our overall sum is 5,383 with 324 applications. That's across all 4 controllers. And these represent the 4 controllers, and then this guy's our test one at the end, the CST, their names are there at the top. The reason to do this is we started discovering what happened was we upgraded controller 4 to like a newer version, like a 4.2 version, and everybody was like, oh, I love that. So they started moving it all from the other controllers. And it usually, again, it's always our biggest clients, it's always our hottest clients. And so you could put 3 of those biggest clients in and they'll have 150 JVMs per client, and that numbers just start shooting up like crazy. So these are some things to think about too. I don't know if anybody's multi-controller, but you probably have at least a test and a prod. So at that way, I would, it can help you too. You don't have to get in there. We also were curious about who was using the most licenses. I don't have a licensing issue yet, but I'm sure it's coming. You can see here, you probably can't see here, this says scheduling. Remember scheduling, I said it was a multi-tenant app in one cell, so it just sucks up the most, but you can see, the X. And then I know by these codes which hospital they go to and who's using it. And sure enough, A20 here is our biggest client. And then it just kind of works its way down. Always good to know because you'll get, every once in a while, you'll get, how's your license count? Use them from your bean counters, right? They always want to know what you're using and how much you give up. So with that, I think I'm out of here. And Dave, it's yours.
All right, thanks, Bill.
You got it.
It's always interesting following Bill in a presentation. He was a little antsy this morning about doing this. If he was if he was monitored by AppDynamics, I think health rules would have been going off all morning with them. And then as soon as he starts the presentation, load goes shooting up to the roof, and he's like pegging the server for the next 20 minutes. All right, so I'm from the application side of things. Bill and I have worked very closely for the last couple of years, getting AppDynamics installed and up and running. We talk almost every day, usually every week. We have a discussion, and Bill's response is, you're a pain in my ass. But then he'll go off and do what I ask him to do, and things are fine. So from the application side of things, when you get AppDynamics up and running, it's like a wealth of information that you haven't seen before. So what are we seeing? And understanding that is the first step into becoming a proficient with AppDynamics. And then organizing all this information so it makes sense to you. We'll go deeper into the application with a few things that we've done, maybe give you some ideas of what you can do with AppDynamics. Avoiding alert overload. We'll talk a little bit about alerting. Some of the special things we've done since we've got it, and a utility that's helped our lives make this a lot easier for us. Okay, so first of all, what are we seeing? Some from the application side of things. Cerner has many different applications. The financial application is one I've been working with for the last 38 years. Actually, I've been involved somehow with financials. I've usually been in the performance side of things from the IBM mainframe days through Sybase, through web server, implementation of the new Sorian Financials version of the product. So somewhere along the lines, I've always been involved with performance and performance tuning, performance analysis, that kind of thing. So it's a browser-based application. It provides financial application functions to hospitals. Things like check-in, check-out. We do revise encounters, all the billing stuff, guarantor processing. Every time you go to the hospital and anything that has to do with the financial side of things, that's what we provide to our clients. When we instrumented AppDynamics, a couple of JVM parameters and point it to a controller, and you're up and running, and you get this wealth of information. It is, and we always thought it was complex, but until we saw that flow map, it was like, wow, no wonder we can't support this thing, because we had no clue how complicated it was. We've got 75 production environments, which maybe makes us a little unique as an AppDynamics customer. The largest process about 7 million requests a day. We also have some test environments, performance labs, that kind of thing. And keeping things in sync is one of our major problems. So here's, everybody's got a flow map. You got to show the flow map to everybody. So this is ours. This really is one of our production clients. And we've got the circles, the green circles there represent the tiers and the number of nodes within those tiers, that kind of thing. So if you're familiar with AppDynamics, you've probably seen these a number of times. If you haven't, someday when you get AppDynamics installed, that's what you're going to see. The first challenge we had with AppDynamics was, okay, what are we going to put in a AppDynamics application? We have, Cerner's we have financials, we have scheduling, we have clinicals, we have security, health data exchange, a number of different applications. Are we going to put them all into one big monolithic application and say, okay, Baycare, here's everything for Baycare? It seemed like a great idea, but then as we worked into things, we thought, let's back off of that a little bit and just kind of stay with financials, because that was the one that was really accepted and going forward. We weren't sure about the other applications at the time, so put financials into AppDynamics, and then started bringing some of the other applications in after that. So as you see down at the bottom there is the scheduling app. So there's another little twist to the to the application kind of thing, is that so we've deployed for our customers. One customer is one AppDynamics application. You have Baycare production environment, and that's one application. Now the scheduling, the way they're deployed is they are multi-tenant, so multiple customers are processed into the same set of JVMs. So that kind of, that one-to-one correspondence didn't exist there. So as long as so they're in a separate application. As long as they're on the same controller, you can follow the business transaction paths and see the calls that are made to the into the scheduling side to pick up information. So, like I said, if there's 10 customers here in this scheduling app, if they're all on the same controller, that's great. Then they can all see they're into the scheduling application. If they're not, then you're kind of out of luck. So one caveat there to consider. So organizing the information that you're seeing out there, obviously the JVMs, the nodes, that's the easy thing, As Bill, I think, mentioned, the names have to be unique across the tiers. We kind of ran into that with the scheduling application in that they have a redundant set of servers and they had the same JVM name, so it kind of screwed things up as they flipped cells, if you will. Then organizing the tiers gets a little bit, takes a little thought process. So for us, when we rolled out AppDynamics, it was about the same time as we were breaking up our big monolithic ear file into what we call mini apps. So we still had the main player, which I think on that, the TNT tier here, that's really the main part of the application, but then there was a bunch of other little mini apps, the remittance and the claims and the business rules engine. Those mini apps were being broken up. And they were being deployed on their own JVMs. So that seemed like a good way to break up, to define tiers based on the way the JVMs are distributed across the nodes. But it's important to make that, make a good decision there, because as you go further into business transactions and health rules and policies, they all kind of allow you to do certain things at the node level and at the tier level. So some of your decisions later on depend on that definition. As far as business transactions, organizing all that incoming traffic was an interesting process. How granular you get is up to you. We have about 500 business transactions right now, and as Bill will tell me often, is that those metrics, you think of all the metrics that are defined on and captured on a business transaction. If you got over 500, you're taxing the controller. So we have to be careful we don't overload the controller. Now, why do we have so many business transactions? Well, we have a lot of different kind of functions, and after the individual analysis, we decided that we really needed some of them. We've used about 20 different custom match rules where and the way our application is written, the URLs come in and they have kind of a generic process statement, and then the actual statements then divided up based on other parameters that are passed through. So we've used the custom match rules to split transactions based on the underlying parameters within that URL. So we are, it's a constant kind of ebb and flow with the business transactions. We're working to cut some back so we can add more. Okay, there are other things we really want to see that we feel that we're not seeing enough visibility, enough granularity in the business transactions. So we want to, continuously tune that. There was, I don't know if you saw the presentation earlier this morning about the futures. They're really doing some great work with business transaction definitions and being able to, in real time, analyze your data coming in and help you dynamically build your business transactions. So some really good stuff coming in future releases. As far as data collectors, I mentioned the HTTP parameters. We're extracting those and annotating them onto the snapshots. That's very helpful for us. So we have a clear picture of what the users are doing. We want to get, and I think it's pretty easy to get the cookie information too. We just haven't got around to doing that yet. As you saw in the title, where there's, Bill's the infrastructure guy. I'm the application guy. So my backlog is kind of long, So when I get to it, we'll get to it. But I think it's pretty easy to pull that cookie information too. JMX metrics is something we've used pretty heavily. Going in on the WebSphere side of things, PMI metrics. We've enabled those. They're available as MBeans. We've created JMX metrics off of that. In the WebSphere world, we had the messaging engine and about 20 different messaging queues that we like to monitor with the available message count to make sure they're not going too high. So all that's been done through custom JMX metrics. And then there's WebSphere. Some of the WebSphere and Tomcat out of the box are enabled automatically through AppDynamics. Here's just an example of the HTTP parameters. As you can see highlighted on the second screen, we've gone in here and selected the default HTTP request data collector, modified that to include all the parameters, but you can specify if there's certain parameters that you want to if you just want a subset. And user principal, we've also selected that, so that's automatically captured by AppDynamics on from the URL. And then the business transactions associated with that, in the data collector tab there, you'll see all the different individual HTTP parameters exploded out and annotated onto that snapshot. So that's really, really a nice feature. There are some other cool things with data collectors that we'd like to look at in the future that we can, dive into parameters that are passed to method calls and see exactly what is being passed in there and help us to better understand and better troubleshoot certain types of problems that we've seen. So alerting, and yeah, like I said, it's the title up there, Avoiding Alert Overload. I went to my inbox this morning and I have 4,000 AppDynamics alerts. So I guess I maybe haven't done a great job of avoiding alerts yet. But a lot of stuff is testing. So we're looking at these alerts as working through them via email and from the policy. And as I get the I get it down to where I think it's working well the way I want it to, and alerting correctly, the frequency is, and validity of the alerts, then we'll roll those into production. We tend to stay with just critical alerts. We don't really use warnings very much. It's hard enough to get people to look at critical alerts, let alone warnings. So we don't really use warnings very much. As far as the health rules, we've certainly, we monitor all the basic kind of things, and then things that we've come across over the years that have caused problems. Maybe connection pool increasing to a certain, exhausting a connection pool, things like that. So we have about 30 health rules, I guess, that we use to monitor our production systems right now. As far as defining the health rules is, you start looking at baselines. They can be there. I think most of our health rules, you'll use the baseline comparison against the metric value and then the standard deviation based off of that. Except there are some exceptions where you need to go into a hard-coded baseline value. Okay, so just be aware that may come up. And then, we monitor some of the other things. We monitor heap utilization, garbage time spent, things like that. We also looked at, you don't really need to monitor, or at least we don't think we need to monitor like every business transaction. Obviously, there's some that are very important, but the tier response time is something that's for us. Monitoring at that level seems to be working out pretty good for us. As far as policies, we've minimized the number of policies. When I first started, I thought, oh, I have a health rule. I should have a policy for that health rule. But then as I got a little more proficient, I said, well, I think maybe just like one health rule, or one policy is maybe the way to go, and then pointing multiple health rules to that. The caveat there is that if you want to do an action off of a policy, you're kind of limited to that. All those health rules one of those health rules have to fire for that action to go. So you may not, if you wanted to do a heap dump, you may not want to do a heap dump if CPU utilization is high, something for that. So you kind of have to decide how your policies, what action you wanted to tie to that policy, and then the health rules that coincide with those. Some special touches we added, dashboards, custom actions, and some things we'll talk about in the futures. So hey, dashboards are great things. They're obviously to monitor whatever kind of things that you think are important. We have an example there and this is more of at the tier level. So we have each JVM responding in a specific tier as far as online JVM heap usage. And like I said, these are, I think the left side's online tier, the right column is the bulk tier, which are very different kind of processing. All of our online users directed to an online tier, so they're kind of isolated in there. And then all of our heavy-duty batch processing is on the bulk JVM tiers. But one thing you should be aware of that you can define a dashboard at the node level or at the tier level, and then you can associate it to, I can define it for the online tier and then have it associated across to all the different tiers that I want. And I can use those to monitor all the nodes within that tier. And I guess just another example of tier performance, another example of a dashboard. But they're very powerful, very useful, very helpful to, going into the metric browser to look at things gets kind of tedious, and you say, well, geez, it's got to be a better way. And there it is. That's the dashboards, and you can easily grab those metrics and put them into the dashboard and help you analyze problems much quicker. Custom actions. This is something that we've used pretty efficiently here to do some special things. AppDynamics gives you the ability to trigger an action that runs a script. So what we've been able to do is, if we found we had some kind of connection leak in WebSphere, we were able to implement a custom action to start a connection pool trace whenever when the metric triggered. So that was very helpful in helping us analyze that problem. You can also, the custom action we have defined is sending our message or our alerts off to a alerting extension. That's something that Bill set up in the controller using a custom extension that's provided by AppDynamics, and then they support multiple monitoring or alerting system extensions. So that's a great way to get your alerts into your alert ticketing system. And this is just a quick example of how we defined our custom remediation script, pointed it has to be loaded into the local apps directory of the machine agent, and that's where it gets fired. Gotcha. All right, and we'll skip over that generated ticket, but wrapping up. A couple of future things we'd like to look at, more custom metrics, atomic codes, connection pool size. We've already implemented that one, so that is up and running right now. And looking at service endpoints, we think it can help us really redefine some of the way our business transactions or our complicated business transactions can be simplified by making some of them into service endpoints. The config exporter, and that's what really has made our life a lot easier. We have, like I said, 75 production environments. So when we define all these policies and health rules and business transaction, custom rules and data collectors, making each one of our 75 customer environments look the same is not easy. And then when Bill goes and says, oh, I got to move a customer A from controller 1 to controller 4, it's very easy for him to flip a parameter and make that change. but I've just lost all my metric, everything that I've built in that controller. So I think we're being wrapped up here, and I think that is pretty much the end. Configure exporter, as you can get that from the AppDynamics website, and it allows you to copy specified configurations to each one of those components from one controller to another. Makes my life a lot simpler. And I think we're wrapping up. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.